How do you handle Wan'Dale Robinson for the Tennessee Titans in a new Diggs situation that he was last year in the Big Apple? What do you do with Tony Pollard knowing that Jeremiah Love could train wreck his FFPC Dynasty fantasy football value? And how concerned are you with Malik Neighbors in his recovery from a torn ACL? All that, plus we have a great guest tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Jamieson, the 52-time FFPC Dynasty League champion, joins us on the show tonight to talk about Kyle Pitts, Devon Achane not showing up to voluntary OTAs, and so much more. We've got a great show for you. Jeff Jamieson is here. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Welcome, everybody, into the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. My name is Eric Balkman. You know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour Extra Reps, the FFPC Insider Access Show on the Better Sports Network, and, of course, the Fantasy Football Players Championship at MyFFPC.com. Thank you to Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics hanging out with us tonight. Normally, my co-host is the definitive commissioner of Fantasy Football One, Farrell Elliott. He is off this week, but we will talk with him again next week. I'll bring in my special guest co-host tonight shortly. If you want to connect with us on X, please do so at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman. Check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, now is the time to send them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X posts, and emails coming up in the fantasy feedback segment later on in the show. Thanks to our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend Rob. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you are not aware, we are just over 2 weeks away from the 2026 NFL Draft live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And if you want to prime for that and play fantasy football year-round, you can do so like tonight's guest does. At MyFFPC.com, we have Dynasty Orphans, Empire Dynasty Orphans for as little as $1, some less than $1. Check it out, MyFFPC.com. That is the place to go. Pick up some Dynasty Orphans and get ready to dominate, play Dynasty Fantasy Football, win some championships this year at MyFFPC.com. While you're there, we're also just 15 days away from the closing of the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament and the Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament. $40,000 and $10,000 grand prize there, if respectively, if you want to join those. Remember, those drafts will close at the start of the NFL Draft. We're about 80% full on both of those right now, so time's running out to join those. Don't be a wish I had, as Farrell Elliott always likes to say. The FFPC Big Gorilla is also live. $350 to enter. $1 million grand prize in that. You can win $1 million at a $350 entry fee. Don't forget the 7 bananas and the early Rampage promos are going on right now. If you enter the Big Gorilla right now, you are still automatically entered live into the FFPC Early Rampage Tournament. So you're eligible for a $1 million and $25,000 grand prize. You're basically getting into 2 tournaments for the price of 1 entry fee right now at MyFFPC.com. That's MyFFPC.com. And if you've always wanted to play high stakes fantasy football for 6- and 7-figure grand prizes, we introduced the Baby Gorilla this year, the same exact format as the Big Gorilla, except it's only $125 to enter, and you could still win $100,000. All those available at MyFFPC.com. MyFFPC.com is where to go to register. We want to remind you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share with your friends, share with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live by clicking that notification bell in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. So every time we go live, you are well aware of it. We were live last night with Mike Stiavnicki, and we are also going to be live tomorrow night with Drew Davenport. And Friday night, we will have a show as well with Scott Hoyt. More coming up on those programs at the end of the show. Before we get into all the fantasy football stuff tonight, I want to bring in my guest co-host tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, he is a winner over the course of his FFPC high-stakes fantasy football career of 52, count them 52, is coming up on 6 championships in FFPC Dynasty leagues. He joins us now tonight to wax poetic on many of the players on his teams and maybe some players that are not on his teams going forward, and to tell you how he has crafted all these championship teams. Please welcome into the program for the first time ever, Mr. Jeff Jamieson. Jeff, welcome in, the chili pepper himself. How's it going tonight, sir?
Going great. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on, Jeff. And the first thing I have to ask you, man, I understand you play a lot of dynasty leagues, but 52 titles in the course of your career. Is there something you attribute to all that success? How have you been able to win so much at the dynasty level in the FFPC over the course of these years that you've been playing?
Well, I think it's from playing a heck of a lot of leagues. You know, you only have to win your fair share of about 10%, and you can get up there, if you play enough leagues.
Is that what I mean? Like, and I don't know, like, what's your process? Do you I always ask this of all the guests that come on and play high stakes dynasty. Do you watch college football, Jeff? How engrossed are you in that? We're a couple of weeks away, 3 weeks away, essentially, from rookie drafts. When do you start getting engrossed into that? Or do you think the rookie draft is overrated, where you're more than willing to trade picks away to acquire veterans? What's your strategy on that? How do you handle these rookies?
Well, yeah, I like to participate in the rookie drafts. I think that they're pretty fun. It can get pretty hectic if you are in a lot of leagues because they go pretty fast. Even though it's an 8-hour timer, it seems like only minutes if you're in enough leagues. So, so that's a challenge. But you got to take a look at these. Now's the time to be doing your research on that. And of course, everything changes once the NFL has its draft. You know what teams these guys are actually going to be in. But yeah, I think the rookies are a very important part of the process, and I try to load up if I think it's a healthy class coming through.
Is there, so are you, I mean, like how close or how well versed are you in the rookies right now? Or do you wait until after the NFL draft to see landing spots and see where these guys end up?
Well, I've started my spreadsheet, so I've got my list of all the pertinent fantasy positions and who's coming through and everything. Don't know the exact order or where they're going yet, but I've started my spreadsheets and I kind of had a career in doing spreadsheets, so I'm still doing spreadsheets now for fantasy football to keep all these teams straight.
That's how I want to lead off tonight, Jeff. When you are not winning all these FFPC Dynasty leagues, what are you doing for a living, or have you hung it up and are solely focused on FFPC Dynasty at this point?
Well, I don't want to say I'm solely focused, but I am retired, and I'm actually in my mid-70s right now.
Congratulations, man.
I have been I started playing fantasy football back when we had to, consult the local newspaper on Monday and Tuesday mornings to look at the box scores and score the games and everything. So I've been playing for a long time, but it's a good hobby for keeping me out of trouble,
So back in the day when you had to use, like newspapers and so on and so forth, were you a commissioner of any of those leagues, or were you did you let everybody else handle that work?
Oh yeah, I was a commissioner for sure.
Oh my God, you are listen, doing the Lord's work. Congratulations. Because I started playing fantasy football in the mid-90s, and I had to do the same thing where I was tabulating results in the newspapers and everything. How did you communicate that to the rest of your leagues? Was this fax machine? Was it what did you do? How did you display results?
Well, back in those early days, I was typically only in 1 or 2 leagues, and it was an office league where we were all in a big office together.
Oh, okay.
Because I worked for big firms, and so we'd have a live draft sitting around the conference room table, and then all your opponents were just in an office down the hall, so to speak. So
I guess it makes it easier at that point. I remember I was a sophomore in high school, and I printed out the results and I brought them in. The guys who were in my league, we all had the same second hour literature class. So I'd bring in the results, I'd print them off and say, hey, this is where we're at this week, and go forward that way. It is so much nicer now that we have this thing called the internet, that we can set lineups, place waivers, manage teams all from the internet or from an app, which has been great over the last 10 years or so, however long we've had the app for the FFPC. It's been tremendous. So Jeff, let's lead things off. Everybody wants to know your player takes. And I guess we'll lead things off in Tampa. Kenneth Gainwell had an unbelievable season last year in Pittsburgh, catching all those passes in the same backfield as a rookie running back who had some serious draft capital in Caleb Johnson, as well as Jaylen Warren, who was pretty experienced when it comes to catching the ball too. But Gainwell came on, and the last, whatever it was, month and a half of the season was pretty unbelievable with the stats he puts up. He ends up the season with 70 plus catches, and in a free agent year. He goes down to Tampa now, taking a pretty nice deal that the Buccaneers have offered him to play next to or behind, however you want to see it, with Bucky Irving in Tampa. The question here is, when you consider what Gainwell did last year, how close does he come to replicating those numbers with the Buccaneers in 2026?
Well, I've got a lot of shares of Kenny Gainwell, and he was very successful for me last year. I'm definitely not. I definitely didn't cut him on any of the recent roster cut downs, and I've been picking him up where I can and trading for him where I can, where the price is reasonable. So I'm high on Kenny Gainwell, and I think he'll do well in Tampa Bay.
Why do you think, like, is it just like the type of player that he is that you think he's going to continue this success in Tampa? Or do you think he's that much of a complimentary player to Bucky Irving where he's still, I'm not going to say he's going to catch 70 balls again this year, but if he's catching 55, 60 balls, is that just a statement to his talent? Or do you think that this is going to eat into Bucky Irving's workload down there?
I think he'll still be primarily a third rounder passing down back and be relying on receptions more so than his rushing prowess. And Bucky Irving's a good player, but he's also had some injury history and so forth. So, and Rashad White is gone. So I think Gainwell's in a good position to get plenty of touches in Tampa Bay.
Jeff, do you have Bucky Irving in a bunch of dynasty leagues right now?
Oh, I've got him on. I couldn't tell you how many, but I've definitely got him on more than a few, and he's been good when he's been healthy.
Right. Do you think that when he's healthy this year, are you of the opinion that that Irving is going to let dynasty owners down because Gainwell is going to take some of these catches away from him? I guess the thing is, are you trying to move him at this point, or do you think both Irving and Gainwell are going to be successful for Tampa this season?
Well, I haven't been actively trying to move them, so I've been holding on to them where I got them. I don't know. I think that I just think they'll complement each other pretty well, and Baker's the kind of guy who needs plenty of help in that area. So I think that I don't know. It's an interesting division, and not a lot of great defense or anything being played down there in the NFC South. So I think they both have plenty of room for production.
Yeah, and I have to ask too, as I'll wrap up the Buccaneers discussion here. No Mike Evans in Tampa this year. Obviously, Gainwell will replace some of those targets that Evans was soaking up last year. Do you envision a seamless transition to the post Mike Evans era for Baker Mayfield, given that he has Jalen McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Chris Godwin? Are we going to see a Baker Mayfield statistical performance in 2026 similar to what we've seen the last couple of years?
Well, Mike Evans has been a great player, and I've always been a fan. I was a fan of his back when he was playing for Texas A&M before he ever made it to the NFL. So, but they still have a good, strong receiving core there, and you got guys like Tez Johnson who hardly can get his hands on the ball unless somebody's hurt. So they've got plenty of depth there, I think, and I think they'll be okay on the receiving.
It's going to be like I always say, who are the fun offenses to be watching for this upcoming season? And Tampa's right up there for me because I want to see how things turn out. I want to see if Egbuka can take that next step, given that he really faltered down the stretch last year. Maybe not to anything that he did or didn't do. It was just a crowded wide receiver room. And Bucky Irving was crushing it. Rashad White was catching passes this past year too. So watching this Tampa offense coming into 2026 is definitely something that I think we would be I should say, like, we should be well on notice to be paying attention to this season. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating was the Mark Andrews extension in Baltimore. Essentially, when the Ravens decided to extend him an additional 3 years, that was the sign that we knew Isaiah Likely would not be back in Baltimore. And sure enough, he signs with the New York Giants and he moves on. Is that extension for Andrews, knowing that he does not have Likely there, and certainly the Ravens could invest a first-round pick into Kenyon Sadiq. Maybe they grab Eli Stowers in the second round. Who knows? But when you consider that Andrews inked this extension and there's no Likely on this team, I know it's weird to say, hey, this is a buying opportunity for this tight end that has let us down the last couple of years. That is definitely, his best football is behind him at this point because of his age curve. What's your opinion on Mark Andrews? Can we expect some borderline top 12 tight end seasons over the next 2 or 3 years? Because I be honest with you, I normally like to follow the money on this, but I'm scratching my head a little bit with this Andrews extension. Perhaps you can shed some light on this, on what we need to be doing as dynasty owners with Mark Andrews at this point.
Well, I'm holding on to him. He's been a good player for them, and Lamar Jackson has been on record as saying he likes to look for his tight ends in the end zone, and he's obviously shown a great liking for throwing the ball to Mark Andrews. So I think the departure of Isaiah Likely will be a benefit for Andrews as long as he can stay healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that was the main problem with his deteriorating numbers the last couple of years more than anything. And so I don't know, FFPC tight ends are premium, right? So you got to pay attention to the tight ends and be well stocked on those. And I think he's a good player still. So
it's your opinion that Andrews, like when he's healthy, or I should say his health has been the biggest detriment to him putting up numbers. It's not been Likely. It's not been anything else. It's just a matter of him being on the field, because when he's on the field, you know that you can feel pretty good about putting him in your starting lineup.
Yeah, I think you're all over it.
Okay. I want to move on here, Jeff, and discuss another tight end that does not have necessarily age on his side, and that's Dallas Goedert. Goedert is a player that has been very good to us over the years, and there was some talk about him not coming back to the Eagles this year. They ended up signing him, so he's under contract this year. And while that in and of itself is interesting, I think the more interesting thing, and I've been talking on this show and other shows that I do about the potential of how big Devonta Smith could be this year if the Eagles decide to move on from A.J. Brown. But I think Goedert should be involved in this conversation as well. If they do move on from Brown, I got to imagine that the Eagles invest either in day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft in a pass catcher, a wide receiver, tight end. Could be Kenyon Sadiq for all I know. But the way that you need to handle Dallas Goedert right now, given the fact that it seems like the Eagles are still silently trying to move him, may come after June 1st. And when something like that happens, I feel like this could be a buying opportunity for Goedert. Not necessarily a long-term thing, because he could be off the Eagles in the 2027 season. But with everything going on behind the scenes from the Eagles and players like you who are always trying to get ahead of the news, is Goedert a player that you want to invest in right now, perhaps parting with a rookie draft pick, knowing that Goddard could be a very, very important piece of this passing game in 2026 if the Eagles decide to move on from A.J. Brown?
Well, again, I follow the tight ends closely. Goddard had a game I don't remember exactly which game it was. It was at the end of the season last year. It might have been in the playoffs, but he was really tearing it up. And I think he's a primary target for Hurts, whether or not A.J. Brown is back or not. I think he's still going to be a big part of the offense. And I like Goddard. I'm holding on to him. I think he's got 1 or 2 good years left. That's
interesting too. And I should mention this, just because if Goddard is not around in Philadelphia for the 2027 season, there is a very good chance that he catches on with another team and can still churn out like a top 15, maybe even a top 12 season too. I think at this time of year, we're so focused on rookies and youth or whatever. But and this isn't necessarily a Goddard question, Jeff, but when you consider these veterans that again are on the downside of their careers, there's still value in these guys in dynasty fantasy football.
Right. Yeah. Like Dalton Schultz is a good example of that. A guy who's been around for a while, and he's definitely fading on all the so-called expert draft lists and everything. And he's fairly available in FFPC leagues. A lot of people were cutting him, to get down to the 16 roster slots. And he doesn't really have that much competition in Houston for reception. So,
I'm looking at the chat that's going on. Steve G, Scott Hoyt, Adam Hahn, all talking about this right now. I don't think I have Jeremiah Love on the rundown. I'll just bring Jeremiah Love up real quick because he's expected to be widely, regardless of where he goes, he's widely expected to be the 101 in FFPC rookie drafts, FFPC rookie Superflex drafts as well. If he were to go, like I have said over and over, Jeff, whether he goes to the Titans, whether he goes to the Giants, the Commanders, whatever, that's not going to affect his draft stock as well. Are you putting any kind of stock in potentially the Cardinals drafting him at 3? I feel like now it's kind of a smokescreen that's coming out that the Cardinals may take him, trying to get one of these 3 teams that need running backs to draft or to trade up to 3. If he ends up in Arizona, man, I just hate that for Algier. I hate it for Connor. Quite frankly, I kind of hate it for Love as well.
Yeah. I hadn't really focused a whole lot on the Arizona connection there because I agree with you. I think that they might trade that pick to somebody else. He might go number 3 overall, but I'll be surprised if Arizona goes running back. They have so many needs on that team.
I always assume, like Sigmund Bloom from Football Guys always says, assume rational coaching. I always try to assume rational GMing, this time of year. But then I think it would be as much as I think it'd be a bad pick for the Cardinals to take Love at 3. I think it'd be a bad pick for the Giants to take Love at 5 when they already have Scadaboo, when they already have Tracy. And that kind of worries me as well. Not so much for Love, Jeff, but if Love ends up going to New York, man, Mike, and I don't know what you look like for Cam Scadaboo shares in FFPC Dynasty leagues, but that would I wouldn't say kill his value, but that puts a huge dent in Scadaboo value. Are you being proactive at all in trying to move Scadaboo, or are you standing pat on him?
I don't have him on very many teams, not as many as I would like to have him on. And so I actually traded for him recently in one league. So, I haven't. I'm not ready to punt on Scadaboo, and I don't know. There's like you said, 4 or 5 different teams that are high likelihood of drafting Jeremiah Love, and so I don't know. I hate to at this point in the year, in March and April before the draft. I hate to get too tied down into making assumptions about who's going to land where and what they're going to have to do about it.
I think that we cannot. It seems like January hits every year, and I just want these rookies to get drafted. Like, I want to know where they're going to be playing next year, and we'll find out in Pittsburgh 2 weeks from tomorrow, which is going to be very exciting to see. Last year in Green Bay for the NFL draft, the Saints, I don't know if they necessarily surprised us too much, but they ended up going with Tyler Shook, and he beat out Spencer Rattler during the 2025 season, ended up putting up some pretty good numbers with Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. And I know the quarterback class this year is not great. It's basically Mendoza and then everybody else. Do you feel like Shook is worth investing in Superflex leagues right now? Or do you think that he's just the Saints are sort of treating him as a bridge quarterback in order to get them to the 2027 season when they still may have like a top 15, top 20 pick in a quarterback class that should maybe feature 4 or 5 guys going in the first round of the NFL draft? What's the proper way to handle Shook in FFPC Superflex Dynasty leagues at the moment?
Well, there's only 32 starting quarterback jobs in the league, and Superflex, all 32 are going to be scooped up pretty fast. And none of them are sitting out there on the waiver wire. And so, I thought he did really well last year after he took over for Rattler. And I know just listening to Moving the Chains and some of those other shows like that, I mean, the New Orleans fans are very high on Shug and everything. So I don't know. I think he's definitely got another really wide open opportunity to prove himself again this year and take getting another quarterback off the table. They'll have so many other needs on that team.
The quote from the YouTube chat right now from our good buddy Adam Hahn. It's Shug. There's no K sound. My apologies on that, Adam. Tyler Shug's name right going forward here. And then you also have Joe King saying the Saints would have made the playoffs last year had they started Shug all season. And I think what's interesting about that is if you are trading for Shug in Superflex leagues right now, they could very well draft a wide receiver with that pick that they have in the top 10. And all of a sudden you're pairing now Carnell Tate or Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon with Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. And you have Travis Etienne in that backfield. And all of a sudden Shug is surrounded by a lot of weapons. I wonder if now is the time to grab Shug in Superflex leagues, Jeff, because the price on him could go up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's got a very nice price tag right now for Superflex. So I think that his price has lagged his performance from last year, quite frankly. So I'm surprised at just how available he is.
He's an interesting cat to be watching to see what New Orleans does to surround him with more weapons coming up in 2026. It was sort of the approach that the Bears took, Jeff, last season when it came to surrounding Caleb Williams with as many weapons as possible. You saw what they did drafting Rome Odunze a couple years ago when they already had DJ Moore. They had Keenan Allen on that team. And then we saw this past offseason prior to the 2025 campaign where they went out and added a bunch of interior offensive linemen that were going to help protect Williams. But they also, in the NFL draft, after they took care of the needs on the offensive line and free agency, they went ahead and drafted a couple of pass catchers for him. Colston Loveland in the first round last year, and then Luther Burden right away in the second round, which is very exciting to see. One of the players that I was most looking forward to see what happened to his dynasty value last season was DeAndre Swift. There were plenty of reports that came out that said the Bears are ready to take this running back at this spot in the draft, and then they got sniped by all these other teams. It seemingly it depended upon who you believe. It happened like 3 or 4 times where the Bears wanted to draft a running back, perhaps to take over for Swift. And then at that point, when it got to day 3, they wanted somebody to complement Swift. Well, Kyle Monangai did more than just complement him. This is a guy that really ate into the Swift workload. Swift survived free agency in Chicago this year. It remains to be seen whether he survives the draft. I think if he does, regardless of what the Bears do in the draft, I don't think there's going to be any Bears or any draft pick that the Bears can make that is really going to hurt his value. My big concern, if I have Swift, and I do have Swift in a few dynasty leagues, Jeff, my big concern with Swift is what is Monungai going to do in year 2 after he really surprised a lot of people, myself included, as a 7th round pick out of Rutgers last year? How badly do you think Monungai is going to hurt Swift's opportunity, Swift's production, Swift's dynasty fantasy football value this upcoming season?
Well, I think he'll hurt it just as much or more this year as he did last year. Ben Johnson, before he came to Chicago for several years, as an offensive coordinator, he's always kind of had the two running back system. He had David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs there, and he used them both a lot. Mm-hmm. And last year he used both Monungai and Swift a lot, and I think that'll continue because that's kind of the way he operates.
Is Monungai a guy that, and I know all the FFPC Dynasty owners had to cut down to 16 players, and it's tough to keep certain players on your roster. Yeah. Is Monungai a guy that you'd want to go after in trades right now, or perhaps deal DeAndre Swift? How would you be treating those Bears running backs, Jeff? And I don't know what your shares look like for both those guys on your Dynasty teams right now. How would you be treating those players, whether you own them or whether you don't own them in Dynasty leagues?
I've been involved in several Monungai trades and trade offers and negotiations back and forth. So I've been trying to pick him up if I can get him at a good price. And he's young. He showed a lot of promise last year. So I like Monungai. Swift has been around for quite a while. It's already his 3rd team and so forth. So I don't know if the Bears will move on from him that quickly, but I think Monungai is in a great place to further achieve.
Those Monungai conversations that you have been involved in with trades, are you starting those trade offers, or are you fielding trade offers for Monungai?
It's been going both ways.
What's your feel on how the FFPC Dynasty players are pricing Monungai right now? Do you feel like they're fairly high on him, or do you feel like you can get him at a discount?
It's been a situation where people are trying to get a second for him, and I'm trying to get him for a third.
Okay. All right. And that makes sense, obviously, when it comes down to it, to try to increase the dynasty capital on your roster. Did you have a tough time? I mean, I don't even know what it was like for you with Dynasty Cutdown Day happening, roughly just over a week ago. Were you scrambling to make some moves in order to get down to that? Or did you have enough fat on your roster, so to speak, that you could cut players pretty easily?
Well, I have a wide variety of, I may have won a few leagues, but I definitely, I'll have a number of leagues that I bought for $1 over in Dynasty Depot or something. So I've got, the answer to that question is both ways, I guess. But on my contending teams, it's really hard to make that last cut or two, to get down to 16.
Was there one player that you got rid of? You're like, just kicking yourself, like, God bless it, I really didn't want to lose this guy on my dynasty teams, but I had to cut him. Was there any players like that for you this year?
Oh my God, there's several of them for sure. I'm having trouble thinking of one right off the top of my head, but
it's always tough every year, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Try to pare down your roster, and I feel like I'd be cut down days at the end of March. If I was playing in FFPC Dynasty leagues, once that second week of March hits, man, I'm sending out trade offers to try to get ahead of it, to see if I can pare down my roster and collect some draft picks or what have you. Has that been the same process for you, where March is a very, very active trading season?
Extremely active, yeah, both receiving and sending offers, and a lot of trades get done. And it's amazing how overvalued a lot of owners consider, even though they're trying to cut for a roster cut down, they're still trying to get top dollar for them, and so a lot of people have trouble getting deals done, I think.
It's the endowment effect, right? My buddy Two-Packer brings this up all the time, and I'm guilty of it as well, where you value your own assets, even though you know that they're about to not be your assets, like you're going to have to cut them, you overvalue them, and it becomes a roadblock in trading.
Yeah, you still want full price, or full value compared to what you paid for them or drafted them at or whatever. I expect discounts in March.
Right. Yes. Adam Hahn posting, he had FFPC Dynasty League where he had to cut Jalen McMillan and he immediately regretted it. And it's one of those things where in Tampa, like, you want to keep those guys around. We talked Buccaneers earlier, Jeff, but when you look at those pass catchers in Tampa, do you want shares of all those guys, Godwin and McMillan and Egbuka? I guess it comes down to McMillan and how you value him this year. Is that a player that you want to find a way to keep him on your team as much as possible?
I have not prioritized him. In fact, I cut him in a couple places because it's been complicated. It's been crowded in Tampa Bay. We were talking about them earlier, and he's still only about the fourth wide receiver on the depth chart. So
right. We have I'm going to bring this up right now. Another question in the YouTube chat. I'll throw it up on the screen for everybody watching this. We have Joe King asking a specific question to you, Jeff. He wants to know if elite tight ends, and I'm assuming this means like the top 3, maybe the top 4 guys, are they valued higher in dynasty leagues as opposed to redraft leagues? And I guess if we can throw that to you and have you weigh in on this, do you feel like more people hang a higher price tag in dynasty on players like Bowers, players like McBride, players like Loveland, like that in dynasty leagues than what you would pay a similar price, like in redraft leagues? Do you feel like you're paying less of a price to draft those guys as opposed to what it would cost to get them in dynasty?
I think so. I think especially those guys you mentioned, they're all quite young. They're just all 1-2 year players or so, and they have pretty high price tags in dynasty. And I don't know. I think they are going at a very premium price for dynasty.
I was talking with Mike Stiavnicki on the road of his high stakes lowdown last night, a guy that you probably played against in dynasty leagues in the FFPC. You've won 52 leagues. He's won 30 over the course of the last half decade or so. And I asked him, and I'll ask you, Jeff, do you think we're coming into a golden age of tight ends in fantasy football? And what I mean by that is you have guys like Sean McVay leading the way in this 13 personnel where so many tight ends are on the field at the expense of wide receiver 2s and maybe slot receivers in certain regard. And while that's all fine and good as far as how the NFL is treating it, you also have to look at who the top tight ends people are paying for in dynasty, the top tight ends that they are drafting in redraft. They're all fairly young, right? Loveland, Bowers, McBride, Laporta, Tyler Warren. Like these are not like Travis Kelce aged like back end of the career tight ends. Do you feel like, especially in dynasty, do you feel like we're coming into sort of a golden age of the tight end position where there's not only a league-wide mandate to get more tight ends on the field and involved in offenses, but the best tight ends, Jeff, seem to be guys that are fairly young too?
Well, Eric, I think you're the one that's driving all that by having tight end premium in your platform there. So,
yeah, well, like blame us, right? Blame the FFPC. and there is something to be said for that. And Mike was talking about his double elite tight end strategy, where he tries to get 2 tight ends on his team that are not just top 12 guys, but top 6 guys, top 4 guys, because it forces the issue with his league mates. It forces the issue with people trying to match, playing these against these tight ends every week. And if you have 2 of them, tight end premium, you have that dual flex, so you can easily play 2 of them every single week and still be able to flex out a running back, still be able to flex out a wide receiver. I don't know, and maybe you see it a different way. But you already talked about, Jeff, like how valuable these elite guys are. And I wonder if like they're going to continue to be valued fairly high or maybe even overvalued in certain dynasty leagues right now with the FFPC format, that if you can get your hands on like, Bowers and Warren, McBride and Loveland, Fannin and Laporta or something like that, it really puts you up as having a significant advantage week to week when you're trying to beat these teams you're playing against.
Well, I'm very familiar with what you're talking about right there, because that's kind of one of my plans going. And I think that I know for a fact that I have multiple teams where I'm starting 3 tight ends on a weekly basis with all the flex positions and everything. So yeah, if you can it gives you a chance to kind of corner the market on those really good tight ends, and it can really carry you a long way in the standings.
As we shift back to the running back conversation, I know we talked about the Eagles earlier, but I do want to bring up Saquon Barkley. And feel free, Jeff, to throw cold water on this. This is just me with just looking at this from like a very simple angle. Saquon Barkley was unbelievable in 2024. And I think many people knew he was not going to replicate those stats in 2025. There had to be some regression coming, and regression did hit. Whether that was all Barkley's fault, I think it's pretty clear it wasn't. I think the offensive line was not what it was in 2024. There were a lot of people complaining about the offensive coordinator and Kevin Patullo last year, that people had an issue with him sort of capping Saquon Barkley's upside. Quite frankly, he had so many big-time runs, big plays that were just not going to be repeatable from year to year. I think about, and this is, I'm going to frame this in a redraft standpoint. Barkley was going as the 103 on average in redraft leagues in 2025 after his massive season. If we look at redraft leagues in the FFPC Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament right now, dude is going at the end of the second round. So obviously redraft players are giving a big time discount on Barkley this year. Has that trickled over to Dynasty, Jeff? In your opinion, can you buy the dip on Saquon Barkley, a guy who definitely overperformed in 2024, probably underperformed in 2025? Is this a buying opportunity for Saquon Barkley right now, or has that not sort of been your experience in trying to acquire him or perhaps trade him away?
Yes, I like Saquon Barkley a lot. I think he's a class guy and everything. And I do think that, and that sounds about right, saying, going from the 103 to the late second, that's probably not dissimilar from what we're going to be seeing in dynasty leagues too, because of the dip and he is getting older and all that stuff.
Right.
But I think he's got a lot left in the tank. And so I'm going after him.
Do you want to venture a guess on how old Saquon Barkley is right now, Jeff? Any guess?
I don't know. I guess he's 27 or 28, something like that. 27
would have been my guess, because it feels like he's 27. He actually in February this year he turned 29, which. Wow. Yeah, it's surprising, right? That he is that old. It doesn't, and maybe the way he plays, we think about the reverse hurdle that he had. It just seems like he's that much more athletically advanced that he, maybe the age curve doesn't hit him the same way. I have him, I believe I have like 9 or 10 dynasty teams, nowhere near what you have, but I have like 9 or 10 dynasty leagues. I think I have him on one league, and it's one of those things where I should be more proactive and seeing what I can get for him, because I'm not hurting for running backs in that league. I have really good running backs, so I could easily move him for a wide receiver or a tight end. I feel pretty good about it, but I have not done it yet, and I feel like if he does have a successful 2026, where maybe he hits 12 or 1,300 yards rushing, maybe 1,600, 1,700 total yards and double-digit touchdowns, then maybe then is the time to move off him, considering he'll be 30 come the start of the 2027 season. I just feel like now is not the right time to move off of him.
And he doesn't have a lot of competition in that backfield either. Not in terms of, not like some of the other ones like Pittsburgh, where they, or as we were talking about earlier with even with Tampa Bay, they don't have any like proven commodities behind Saquon there.
I think Barkley's going to be an interesting guy in redraft and dynasty this year. When he moved, I always get skittish when players move from one team to the other, because they're adapting to a new quarterback, a new offensive scheme, new OC, new head coach, new everything. And sometimes it works out. I think about DeAndre Hopkins when he moved teams, it really worked out for him. Devontae Adams, same thing. But sometimes it doesn't always work out all that great. And I would not put Wan'Dale Robinson, Jeff, on that level of these elite wide receivers. But I will say, and utilize that framing of this question, he moves from the familiarity of New York and Jackson Dart and that offense that he had last year, where he showed that he could still get downfield. You think about that big Russell Wilson game he had against the Cowboys in like week 2 or week 3, whatever it was, of the 2025 season. So that's part of his repertoire. And now he's going to Tennessee, where they paid him a boatload of money, ostensibly to be the number 1 wide receiver on that team. We'll see what they do in the draft, but I think that no matter what happens, even if the Titans soak like their number 4 pick in a Carnell Tate or somebody like that, I still think Robinson will be the number 1 receiver at a minimum in 2026. When if we can flash forward to the Jeff Jamieson crystal ball, how do you think the 2026 season that Wan'Dale Robinson is about to have, how do you think that's going to compare to what he did this previous year in the Big Apple?
Well, I don't like the quarterback situation there quite as well in Tennessee. Calvin Ridley is still on. I'm not sure what his injury status is and when he's going to be back, but he is signed for this year, and I think he's going to be back as part of the wide receiving core. And then they've just got some younger guys there. So, it's if Cam Ward can get him the ball, he might equal what he was doing in New York. That's kind of the best case scenario, I guess.
I don't know. Do you have Wan'Dale Robinson on?
Yes.
Okay, so you do, and you had him you had him for the Giants season last
year, right? Yes.
Okay. So have you been going out and adding more of him, or have you been kind of standing pat?
I've been kind of standing pat. I haven't been trying to move him, but I haven't been aggressively trying to grab him either, I guess. So
the emails have rolled in. I want to get to a couple of them at least at a minimum for you tonight, Jeff. The first one we'll go to is from Bill in Mansfield, Ohio. Oh, this is another great Titans question. We go from one Titan to another. Bill in Mansfield, Ohio writes, with the Titans expected to draft Jeremiah Love, how hard are you trying to part ways with Tony Pollard at the moment? Thanks, Jeff. That is Bill in Mansfield, Ohio. Bill, we appreciate the email. I don't know, Jeff. I've been saying for weeks that I thought Love was going to be a Titan. I think I'm backing off that a little bit. If you put a gun to my head, I still believe that the Titans are going to be the ones to take Love, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him fall to 5 to the Giants, fall to 7 to the Commanders, or maybe somebody else trades up for Love. But knowing what we know now, I think if you look at some of the sports books out there that are offering odds on who the Titans are going to pick, I don't think Love is minus money, but he's probably got the shortest odds of anybody being that number 4 pick. Do you feel like you need to be proactive in trying to move Pollard? Because if Love is drafted by the Titans, the dynasty value for Pollard goes way down.
Yeah, and Spears too.
And Spears too. Yep.
Yeah. Pollard and Spears were actually pretty decent for him the last couple of years. And so I'm still not convinced that Love is going there, but so I'm not predicating my moves at this point on the assumption that that's where he's going to end up. It's just one of 4 or 5 possibilities like we were talking about earlier.
It's interesting too, because I think that there are people out there that will have Pollard on their teams that are motivated to draft, or beg your pardon, that are motivated to selling Pollard at 70 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, because they know after that first round, a couple of Thursday nights from now, that Pollard you'd be hard pressed to sell him for 40 cents on the dollar, right? But it doesn't seem, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Jeff, it doesn't seem like that. And this is not just a Love question. We can expand this out. It doesn't sound like that's your approach to dynasty, where you are, you look at a situation and say, okay, well, this is probably most likely to happen, but there are a lot of other scenarios that could take place where it doesn't kill Pollard's dynasty value, and or whoever the veteran incumbent is in that situation. And if that's the case, you sell Pollard for 70 cents, 80 cents on the dollar, you might be kicking yourself if one of those other scenarios comes to be. It doesn't sound like that this is the way that you like to play dynasty fantasy football.
Yeah, that's not really the way I roll. So I don't go out on a limb making predictions on where people are going to land in the draft or that kind of stuff. So I just try to build as solid a roster as I can for each team.
and then it just comes to be rolling with the punches. Whatever happens on in round 1 or round 2 or round 3, then you adjust after that. Which is probably honestly, that is probably listen. I'm telling you how to play Dynasty. You have 52 Dynasty championships in the FFPC. I think it's safe to say you know what you're doing, and your process has been working for several years on this. Eddie in Baldwin, California, has another email for us tonight. He writes, "How good will Michael Pittman be in Pittsburgh?" Thank you for the email, Eddie in Baldwin, California. Yeah, Pittman moves on from the Colts, and I feel bad. Farrell Elliott, my normal co-host on the show, is the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary of the Michael Pittman fan club. So to have a Pittman president without him, it seems a little disingenuous, but I'm going to ask you anyway. He played last year essentially with a fractured back and put up decent numbers while ceding a lot of work to Alec Pierce. Obviously had to deal with the quarterback situation where he was looking pretty good with Daniel Jones. And then when they brought Phillip Rivers on, it just everybody failed to really live up to their fantasy potential there. Now he goes to Pittsburgh. I'm assuming he's going to be catching passes from Aaron Rodgers this year, but we don't want to assume that necessarily since there has been no formal announcement like that. But what are you doing with Pittman right now? And assuming it is Rodgers throwing the football to him in 2026, Jeff, what are you doing with Pittman? What are your expectations for him in his first year, not in a Colts uniform?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't really been actively trying to do anything with Michael Pittman. I've got him on a few teams. I'm not trying to seek him on more. I haven't been trying to get rid of him or anything like that. The whole Aaron Rodgers thing, makes such a huge difference in what his future is going to look like. That I don't know. Maybe for that reason, it's a good reason to move him. But I don't know. I think that Rodgers will probably be back, like you said. DK's kind of had his own behavioral issues.
Yes.
So it's not a bad spot to land with Rodgers throwing the football.
That I'll just ask you about the Steelers offense in general. No more. We're not looking at Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson. Janu Smith is a free agent. He's not on that team anymore. And the Steelers have essentially let Gainwell go and signed Rico Dowdle in his stead. When you look at that Steelers offense, an offense that made the postseason last year in the NFL playoffs, do you believe that the Steelers offense is something that you want to be buying into? Are there any Steelers on that team that you're a fan of this year for dynasty purposes?
It's not one of those teams where I have a lot of guys I'm really pursuing. I think Dowdle's been so good the last 2 years. He's probably an upgrade over Gainwell. Maybe not catching passes per se, but overall stats and everything, Dowdle's been just really solid. So again, you'll have the two running back tandem going there, and like we said, DK and Pittman. I mean, they've got some pretty good talent. They had like 4 tight ends on their team last year, with Freiermuth and Jonnu, and so I don't know why they signed Jonnu in the first place. And I never really understood that.
I'll tell you why. I think why I think they signed Jonnu Smith. Arthur Smith. I know that they are not related, but they have the same last name. There might be something there that Arthur Smith just loves having Jonnu Smith on his team. And now Arthur Smith, what is he? I think he's the OC now for Ohio State, I want to say. There you go. Yeah, he's not going to be offensive coordinating the Steelers offense this year. And maybe that's a good thing. Steve G already chimed in that the only Steeler he wants this year is Pat Freiermuth. Certainly the potential for opportunities for Freiermuth is going to go up with no Jonnu Smith. Adam Hahn saying he likes Jalen Warren. I just drafted Jalen Warren in a KFFSC best ball league that I'm in right now in, I don't know what round it was, 8 or 9 or whatever, as my third running back. So I hold out hope on what he can do this year. But to your point, I think I'm with you. I'm not terribly excited about drafting any Steelers offensive players this year. And
Arthur Smith has been depressing fantasy values for years wherever he was. And so maybe that's a good thing for Pittsburgh fantasy players.
I think it's a great thing. I think a lot of people, plenty of people, Jeff, have come on this show celebrating the fact that Arthur Smith is no longer the OC in Pittsburgh as well. So you are not alone in that. Final question I have for you before we get into some of the news, the last couple of minutes of the show here. Is there one player or maybe a couple of players that you're looking to acquire in your dynasty leagues at this point? And then is there one player that maybe you're staying away from, or maybe one offense that you're staying away from for dynasty purposes in 2026?
Well, I guess I'm mostly focused on who's coming into the league and who's going to be in the draft class and all that. So, and being a tight end guy, I like Sadiq. If I can get him in a few places, just like last year, with Fannin and even Rondé Gadsden, some of those guys come in and they light a fire, and they're really hard to obtain if you don't get them right up front. So I'd like that. Other than that, Mendoza and Jeremiah Love, as we've been talking about, are guys that I'll be targeting a lot, obviously, but I don't have that many high picks. So
is there any, talk about the receivers, and obviously there's the big three, but after that you have Denzel Boston, you have KC Concepcion. Is there one wide receiver, or maybe not even just a wide receiver, Jeff, that you're really excited to see where the landing spot is? Because I think outside of Jeremiah Love, and we kind of know the landing spot for Fernando Mendoza, is there one player that you're really excited to see where he ends up this year?
Wide receiver, I think that's kind of a wide receiver draft, and there's 6 or 8 of them that are really strong. And I haven't totally decided what my order even is for those guys. It depends on where their landing spots are. But yeah, there's several good ones. There's more coming out of Ohio State every year like crazy, and I think that Lemon will be really good, and Tate. So yeah, there's that Tyson guy. So I don't know. I've got to the bottom of that one yet. So I got some more work to do here.
Tyson's my guy. I mean, I just not that I'm underrating the injuries, and people who watch these shows know I'm a big Jordan Tyson guy. But I'm very excited to see what he does at the next level for a dude who was 18 years old and was the #1 receiver on Colorado. I mean, that's a big thing to me. And when you consider, the injuries that he's had, the hamstrings are a little concerning, but a collarbone, to me, that's a freak thing. A torn ACL, that's a freak thing. I don't think that necessarily gives me any pause. If that was it, if those were the only injuries he had in college, I would not even care at all about the injury history. Because of the hamstrings, there is a little bit of a concern, but I'm very excited to see where Jordan Tyson ends up. Eli Stowers, if I'm going to ask you about him real quick, this was a player that had some measurables even better than Kenyon Sadiq at the NFL Combine. Certainly, if this dude gets, I don't think he goes day 1, but if he gets round 2 draft capital, very excited about that for Stowers. And you being a tight end guy, you got to be excited about that as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. In the event I'm unable to get Sadiq in places, I'll certainly be looking at Stowers even harder.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's move on here. And speaking of tight ends, I want to lead things off with Kyle Pitts here in the Fantasy Flash segment as we sort of wrap up the show here. Ian Rappaport reported that Pitts did indeed sign the franchise tag. He was at voluntary OTAs. It is a 1-year, $15 million deal. This is going to be his age 26 season, and he gets to play in Kevin Stefanski's what we think is a very, previous history would tell us it is a very tight end friendly system. So we're very excited to see that. Obviously, it's going to be Tagovailoa or perhaps Michael Penix throwing the ball to him this year. But this is a guy, and listen, Jeff, you have been playing Dynasty long enough to remember when Pitts was coming into the NFL as this highly touted rookie with all these insane athletic measurables or whatever. How do you view him now coming into the 2026 season, knowing that he had this great 2025 year, but his quarterback's going to be different this year. Offense is going to be different. How are you handling Pitts in Dynasty, and what are your expectations for the numbers he's going to put up this year?
Well, it kind of goes back to the Arthur Smith conversation we had earlier. He spent his first couple of years not getting the ball under Arthur Smith.
Right.
And so I'm not surprised that he's come on strong lately, and I think he'll continue to come on stronger. So yeah, I'm really high on Pitts.
It's tough for me, and I looked at, and I don't have Mojo up right now. I'll bring Mojo up here shortly. But he's being drafted as tight end 6, tight end 7. And I really thought he'd be higher than that. I thought he'd be valued higher by the FFPC players in that. And so I think like this is an opportunity I know when I was drafting back in February, I invested in Kyle Pitts a couple of times, and I feel pretty good about it. I thought I got good value on him. We'll see what happens going forward, but I'm with you. I'm excited to see what he does this season. Malik Neighbors is also in the news. This is, Jeff, the portion of the show where you talk me off the ledge with Malik Neighbors, because I do like this player. I love the talent. But we spent the majority of this offseason not hearing a whole lot about the knee recovery, how it was going. Ralph Falciano had a report where he quoted John Harbaugh, the new Giants head coach, saying that Neighbors is not going to be on the field until they get to training camp and maybe closer to the season. Now, there's a chance that he'll be ready to go week 1, but we have seen players coming off torn ACLs, and we know Neighbors had to have a second surgery as well. We have seen players like this come off that torn ACL, and they're not themselves that first year back. What's your level of concern for what Neighbors can do and how close he comes to that in year 1 after this torn ACL?
Yeah, I haven't heard a whole lot about it either. And so I am concerned. I think it could be a slow start for him or something, but man, he was good right out of the gate. So I think he'll get back to that sooner or later. Would
you be willing to, and I don't know, you know this better than me, is Neighbors coming at a discount at all in dynasty leagues at this point, or are people wanting to still get sticker price if they're trading him?
I have not seen a lot of transactions involving him. I haven't been involved in any myself. And so I don't really know the answer to that.
And that's fine. And the fact that you're not seeing the discount, maybe that means there is no discount. Like people who have Neighbors are still either holding him or they're not parting with him for anything less than what they paid for him.
Right.
Maybe this is a non-story, but I want to go down to South Beach here. Cameron Wolf, who covers the Miami Dolphins, reported that Devon Achane did not report to voluntary OTAs. This is interesting in and of it, of the fact that this is the final year of his rookie contract for Miami. He wants an extension. He has seen the public comments that his new GM, John Eric Sullivan, has said that he is a pillar. He is a building block of what they're trying to do in Miami. Jeff Hafley, the new head coach, said this is simply just part of the business here. Again, it's voluntary OTAs. I don't want to make a big deal out of this. Should we, as dynasty players, Jeff, also not make a big deal out of this? Or do you think there is something to be concerned here with Achane trying to get this new contract from Miami?
Yeah, I'm not making a big deal out of it. I think there's so many of those stories floating around of guys trying to get new contracts and everything. And so I don't know, unless it gets really severe with like Ayuk,
right.
I don't pay attention to it until it really starts to become imminent and a real problem.
Jeff, at what point do you start like raising an eyebrow? Does it come down to like training camp? Like, is that when you start like saying, oh, maybe this is a big deal? And until then, you're kind of like just saying whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good time to start looking at it, is once we get into a training camp opening. And if they're not reporting to training camp, then I get concerned.
You have a cat. I just realized this. You have a cat on the screen right now that wants to be part of the show.
Yeah.
What's your cat's name?
This is Twirly.
Twirly. Okay, interesting. I always shut my door because I know my cats would love to jump up and be part of it. My kids have brought in the cats before to be a part of the show. So I always, anytime I see a cat, I'm like, oh, we gotta talk about this.
I spend a lot of time doing volunteer work at local shelters and everything, and so I'm very, very into cats and dogs.
do you have a bunch of cats and dogs at your house?
Right now, I only have 2 cats, but there was a time in my life that my wife and I had 10 cats and 3 dogs all at the same time. Oh
my God. God bless you. I have 2 cats right now, and my wife and my kids do most of the work, like feeding and caring for them or whatever. But I can't even imagine that many. So good on you.
It's crazy.
One last thing, as long as we're in Miami, let's talk about Greg Dulcich. Kevin Clark's show that he has, This Is Football. He had John Eric Sullivan, the GM for the Dolphins. And maybe this is a throwaway thing, Jeff. Maybe there's something to this. He was talking about Greg Dulcich and how he, quote, had a really good back end of the season, and I want to see if he can build on that, end quote. That is what John Eric Sullivan is saying about Dulcich. Now, Dulcich is coming into year 4 of his NFL career, 26, 335 for yardage, and then a touchdown over the last 10 weeks of the season. If you go back to earlier in Dulcich's career, he had 33 catches, 411 yards, and 2 touchdowns when he was a rookie with the Denver Broncos. And then over the next 2 seasons, he basically disappeared from a fantasy aspect. He caught 8 passes. That was it, which is really bad. He was a pretty good pass catcher in college, 68 catches over his last 2 years at UCLA, which is good. He's played nearly 50% of his snaps in the NFL from the slot position, which is what we want to see as fantasy players, which is great. And if you also look at the report from Marcel Louis-Jacques, who covers the Dolphins for ESPN, he said last month that he believes Dulcich is, quote, going to figure heavily into the Dolphins passing game. Now, you look at the never too early ADP right now, Jeff, with Dulcich, and sometimes he's not even going at all. He's an 8th-round pick. And I know you just had to cut down to 16 players in Dynasty. But for those leagues in your rookie drafts where Dulcich is a free agent, is this a player that you'd want to be in business with just to see what happens? Or am I reading too much into what the GM and what the Dolphins beat reporter is saying about Dulcich here?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I after those 2 down years where he didn't do anything, I had very few shares of him last year. I might have had him on 1 or 2 teams or something like that. And I definitely, it was not keeper material or anything like that. And just looking, I mean, I look at RotoWire a lot and their projections and everything, comparing year to year. Man, they have him doing nothing in 2026. And so I don't know how prevalent that is. I think I've seen some other websites where they think that he will be a factor, but yeah, I'm not pursuing him.
I will say this: I am with you to that standpoint. I know I am allowing for the possibility. David Njoku is still out there, and I think he'd make a nice little signing for Miami should they go that direction. This is a fairly deep tight end draft, and while I don't think anybody it would be a slam dunk, top 15 fantasy tight end for Miami, whoever they draft this year, I do think there is the possibility that they could draft somebody who would definitely hurt Dulcich and his fantasy production in 2026. My level of interest in Dulcich is a tight end 3 in best ball drafts of 28 of the 28 round variety.
There you go.
Outside of that, it's tough for me to get excited, but I will say this: if I already have 2 tight ends or maybe 3 tight ends in tight end premium, and I'm looking for a tight end late in my draft, I could do a lot worse than one Greg Dulcich.
There you go.
So there you go. Jeff, this was awesome, man. I know I kept you a little bit longer tonight. Thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight. Congratulations on the 50-plus Dynasty championships you've had. Knowing you're probably going to add to that total in 2026 as well, for sure. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I wish you nothing but enjoyment on the rookie drafts that are coming up, and please enjoy the NFL draft as well when we finally can put landing spots and destinations for a lot of the rookies we've talked about tonight, and some of them that we haven't. It's all a journey. It's going to be a lot of fun in a couple of weeks when we see what takes place in Pittsburgh. Thanks so much for hopping aboard, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me and everything. And let me just compliment you on your site. I used to play half a dozen different sites at the same time. I'm pretty much just playing FFPC these days. So
love to hear it. That is awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. You and Twirly, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. I will bid you adieu, and we will talk again soon, I'm sure.
Okay, great. Thanks, Eric.
That is Jeff Jamieson, ladies and gentlemen, 52-time winner of FFPC Dynasty Leagues. What a great conversation we had tonight. We always have great conversations with all these talented high-stakes players that are playing at the FFPC. So certainly great to hang out with Jeff tonight. That will complete our show tonight. If I can just give you a bit of housekeeping with all the upcoming shows we have this week. Number one, this show will return 10 p.m. live next Wednesday night. Farrell Elliott will be back, and we'll have another great guest that we can talk about rookies and dynasty fantasy football. That's going to be a lot of fun on the FFPC socials next Wednesday night. Now, in case you missed it last night, I mentioned this when in my conversation with Jeff. The 30-time FFPC Dynasty winner, Mike Stiavnicki, joined me to talk a lot about some of the stuff we didn't get to tonight, but a lot of other Dynasty stuff last night on the road of his High Stakes Lowdown. You can check that out, rewatch it on the FFPC socials. It's also should be in the the road of his podcast rotation coming up within the next 24 to 48 hours as well, if you like to listen rather than watch, as I like to do with a lot of my podcasts as well. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to go 2 full hours with Football Guy's own Drew Davenport, legal expert, licensed attorney. Not only will we get into fantasy stuff with him, he just did a mock draft for Football Guys. We'll get into that, but I do want to ask him about some of these legal proceedings that are going on off the field for guys like Puka Nacua, guys like Stephon Diggs, and some others. We'll talk about how the Rashid Rice thing wrapped up as well with Drew Davenport. That is tomorrow on all the FFPC socials, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And then Extra Reps will air HSFF or Extra Reps, 10 p.m. Eastern time this Friday night. No Farrell, but Scott Hoyt, the 7-time FFPC league champion, will join me for that. That's going to be a really good episode. We're going to talk about the Carolina Panthers running back situation. We didn't talk about Malik Willis tonight. Well, I want to get Scott's thoughts on Malik Willis. We'll talk obviously about his best friend forever, Isaiah Likely, on that show. You can check that out 10 p.m. on Friday night. The FFPC Dynasty and Empire Dynasty Orphans available now. We are in the end game, 2 weeks to go before the start of the NFL season. Still some great deals to be had. myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. The Never Too Early Best Ball Tournament, Never Too Early Superflex Best Ball Tournament available for a $125 and $35 entry fee, respectively. $40K and $10K are the grand prizes in those. Remember, those shut down when the NFL draft starts. So get in now while you can. Live and slow drafts available. FFPC Big Gorilla, $1 million grand prize, 7 bananas and early Rampage promos going on right now. And the Baby Gorilla, $125 to enter that. You can win $100,000. All those available at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which this show will be live at 10 p.m. Eastern time next Wednesday. Extra Reps, 10 p.m. this Friday. And, of course, FFPC Insider Access live tomorrow night, Thursday, at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That's going to be a lot of fun. That will do it for the show. For Jeff Jamieson, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. And as our friend Vince Staffolino will remind us, you are officially over the hump right now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One other thing I will remind you before we let you go for the evening. If you've never played Dynasty before, this is the time to get in. Some of the best deals we've had all orphan season. People have been orphaning teams since January. We basically have all of our orphans listed right now. The 77s are sold out for the year, so you won't be able to pick up any of those. We only have a handful of $100 FFPC Dynasty teams, and there are some 250s with insane prices on them right now. Check out the 500 and the 750s too. You're basically getting a lot of those, most of those, I will say, for free for 2026. And some of them definitely championship ready. Check it out. myffpc.com, myffpc.com/dynasty for sale. That is where to go. Thanks for watching, everybody. Be good, and we will talk with you again next week.